Hello everyone, DMG or Jim here to continue along with the Project RTFM, Read the Frickin' Manual. In this case, we're reading the Dungeon Master's Guide 2024, continuing along in Chapter 2. I think this is Part 3 of Chapter 2, but yeah, it is. So we're going to do running social interactions next. Depending on how long this goes, we might do exploration and combat, trying to keep each of the videos around 30 minutes so you don't get too bored of listening to the sultry sounds of my voice. But anyway, as usual, we're reading this. We're keeping in mind the perspective that this is for a new Dungeon Master. I just started playing. I'm not sure what I'm doing. Oh my gosh, help. This book is written for you. There is a lot of good content in here for more experienced DMs, in my opinion. We'll save, I'll try my best to save commentary for the end of the video so we can just read through. You can enjoy this as an audiobook, and then we'll keep on trucking through. So, continuing our series, Chapter 2, Running the Game. The section is called Running Social Interaction. During a social interaction, the adventurers usually have a goal. They want to extract information, secure aid, win someone's trust, escape punishment, avoid combat, negotiate a treaty, or achieve some other objective. Successfully completing this encounter means achieving that goal. Some DMs run social interaction as a free-form role-playing opportunity where dice rarely come into play. Other DMs resolve interactions by having the characters make charisma checks. Most games fall somewhere in between, balancing role-play with the occasional ability check. Role-playing. You don't need to be a practiced thespian or a comedian to create drama or humor through roleplay. The key is to pay attention to the story elements and characterizations that make your players laugh or feel emotionally engaged, and to incorporate these things into your role-playing. NPC portrayals. When thinking about how to roleplay an NPC or a monster, consider one or two adjectives that best describe the creature. Knowing the creature's alignment can also help with your portrayal. The classic advice for writers holds true. Show, don't tell. For example, rather than describe the NPC as jocular and honest, have the NPC make frequent puns and freely share personal anecdotes. You can further enhance your portrayal of a creature in the following ways. Use facial expressions. Your facial expressions help convey a creature's emotions. Smile, scowl, snarl, yawn, or pout as appropriate. Use motions and posture. Movement and posture can help define an NPC's personality. You might reflect an archmage's displeasure by rolling your eyes and massaging your temples with your fingers. Hanging your head and looking up at the players conveys a sense of submissiveness or fear. Holding your head and chin high conveys confidence. Using voices. Changing the volume of your voice and borrowing speech patterns from real-life movies or television can make NPCs distinctive. The next section is engaging the players. Although some players enjoy role-playing more than others, social interactions help immerse all players in the game. Consider the following approaches to make an interaction-heavy game session appeal to all players of any tastes. This is referring back to Chapter 2, the beginning of our chapter, Know Your Players, remember? So, I'll appeal to player preferences. Players who like acting, see Know Your Players in this chapter, thrive in social interactions, so let those players take the spotlight and inspire the other players by their example. However, be sure to tailor aspects of social interactions to fit the other players' taste as well. Involve specific characters. If you have players who don't readily get involved in social interactions, you can create situations tailored for the characters. Perhaps the NPC in question is a family member or a contact of a particular adventurer and focuses attention on that character. Some NPCs might pay particular attention to characters with whom they feel kinship. If a couple of players are doing most of the talking in a social interaction, take a moment now and then to involve someone else. You might have an NPC address another character directly. And what about your hulking friend here? What will you pledge in exchange for my favor? If a player is less comfortable with role-playing, you can get them involved by asking them to describe their character's actions during a conversation. Use other ability scores. Consider the following additional possibilities to give characters whose charisma is not their strong suit a chance to shine. Strength. An NPC who won't talk to the characters until one of them agrees to an arm wrestling match, or a strong character needs to bodily prevent the NPC from running away. Dexterity. An NPC is hostile towards intruders, so the characters must talk from hiding. Or the social interaction provides a distraction that allows a character to get close enough to the NPC to steal something from the NPC's pockets. Intelligence. An NPC's speech is so full of obscure references to a particular area of knowledge that the characters can't use the information they receive until they interpret these obscure facts. or the NPC refuses to give a direct answer, speaking only in vague hints that the characters must piece together to get the information they seek. Wisdom. An NPC is hiding something important, and the characters must read the NPC's nonverbal cues to understand what's true and what's deception. Or key information is now concealed in details around the room where the interaction takes place, which a perception check might notice. The next section is attitude. We're going to go through all three sections. I don't think they're going to be super long. We got time. Attitude. Each creature controlled by the DM has one of the following attitudes towards the adventurers: friendly, indifferent, or hostile. The monster behavior section in Chapter 4 offers guidance to help you determine a creature's initial attitude. Characters can shift a creature's attitude by their words or actions. For example, buying a drink for an indifferent group of miners might shift their attitude towards friendly. When a shift occurs, describe it to your players. For example, the miners might display their newfound friendliness by imparting some useful information, offering to repay the kind gesture at a future date, or challenging the characters to a friendly drinking contest. Ability check and social interaction. You decide the extent to which ability checks shape the outcome of a social interaction. A simple social interaction might involve a brief conversation and a single charisma check, while a more complex encounter might involve multiple ability checks helping to steer the course of the conversation. Using the help action. When a character uses the help action to help another character influence an NPC or monster, encourage the player of the helpful character to contribute to the conversation, or at the very least describe what their character is doing or saying to contribute to the other character's success. The next section is running exploration. Yeah, we're going to do this one and we'll save the last two for our next video. Running exploration, traversing a wilderness, searching a dungeon, circumventing an obstacle, finding a hidden object, investigating a strange occurrence, deciphering clues, solving puzzles, and bypassing or disabling traps are all part of exploration. Not everything in your world needs to be explored painstakingly. For example, you might gloss over an unimportant journey by telling the players that they spend 3 uneventful days on the road before reaching the next point of interest. Using a map. A map can help you or your players visualize a location or region that the characters are exploring. D&D maps come in 3 varieties, with examples of all 3 found in Appendix B and on the poster map. Dungeon map. D&D uses the word dungeon loosely to describe any adventure location that has interior spaces to explore, such as a castle, a tower, a mansion, or a subterranean complex. A dungeon map shows passages, chambers, doors, and other important features of a location. Settlement map. A map of a settlement often shows terrain, cliffs, trees, streams, and so forth, in addition to buildings, bridges, and other important features. Wilderness maps. A wilderness map shows roads, rivers, terrain, and other features that might guide the characters on their travels or lead them astray. The area shown on a wilderness map might be as big as a continent or as small as a glade. Often a map is intended for the DM's eyes only. You can copy portions of a DM's map to share with your players as a visual aid while omitting details that should remain hidden from them. Virtual tabletops often use a fog of war and similar effects to obscure areas and features on the map that you want to keep hidden from your players. Maps designed for use with miniatures tend to be player-facing, revealing nothing that would spoil the adventure. See the miniatures in this chapter. That's going to be running combats. Tracking time. If tracking the passage of time is important during exploration, use a time scale appropriate for the situation at hand. Rounds. In combat and other fast-paced situations, the game relies on 6-second rounds. Minutes. In a dungeon or settlement, movement happens on a scale of minutes. In the Free City of Greyhawk, getting from the Silver Dragon Inn to the wharf takes about 10 minutes, or it takes about 1 minute to creep down a 200-foot-long hallway, another minute to check for traps on the door at the end of the hall, and 10 minutes to search the chamber beyond for anything interesting or valuable. Hours. A scale of hours is often appropriate for short wilderness treks. Adventurers eager to reach the lonely tower 20 miles away at the heart of the forest can hurry there in 5 hours' time. Days. For long journeys, a scale of days works best. Following the road from Valuna City to the Free City of Greyhawk, the adventurers cover 96 miles in 4 uneventful days before a bandit ambush interrupts their journeys. The exploration rules in the player's handbooks gives guidelines for determining travel time based on the character's pace. In most cases, it's fine to estimate that time rather than calculating it down to the minute. Exceptions include situations such as these. Spell timers. The characters might need to go somewhere or accomplish something before the duration of a spell or similar effect runs out. For example, they might use the locate object spell to point them in the direction of an item they seek, so you need to know how far they get in the 10 minutes that spell lasts. Second thing is a triggered event. An event might occur at a specific time. For example, a door might remain open for 1 minute after the password to open it is spoken, or reinforcements might arrive 2d4 minutes after an alarm is sounded. If the characters spend time working on a puzzle or talking to an NPC, you can estimate the time spent by keeping track of how much real time passes. Most combat encounters take less than 1 minute, 10 rounds, but it's fair to round up to a whole minute in most cases, assuming the characters take a few seconds to pull themselves together after a fight. Using similar principles to track the passage of hours, such as when the characters disguise themselves with a seeming spell for 8 hours to infiltrate a stronghold, in this case it takes a lot of small tasks, or something like a short rest, to occupy a full hour. The next section is actions in exploration. Most of what characters do during exploration, aside from movement, relates to just a few actions: search, study, and utilize. Characters can often also use the help action to assist each other with these actions. Other actions come up only rarely. It's seldom necessary to rely on the action rules during exploration, except to remember that a character can only do one thing at a time. A character who's busy taking the search action to look for a secret door can't simultaneously take the help action to assist another character who's taking the study action to find important information in a book. Very good points. Taking turns. Often characters spread out across a room to investigate the elements of the room. The exploration example in Chapter 1 shows this dynamic. In such situation, have the characters take turns, though it's usually not necessary to roll initiative as you would in a combat encounter. Resolve one character's actions before moving to the next. There's no hard and fast rule about how long to spend on each character's activity, but make sure no one is waiting for their turn for too long. You can build tension in an exploration encounter by shifting focus right before a character makes an ability check or opens a chest, leaving everyone eager to hear what happens next. Ability checks in exploration. When a character tries to do something during exploration, you decide whether that action requires an ability check to determine success, as described in the earlier resolving outcomes section. Certain situations might call for a balance between ability checks and role-playing. For example, puzzles are an opportunity for players to do some problem-solving, but players can also lean on their character's talents and attributes to provide directions. A character who succeeds on an intelligence investigation check might notice a clue that gives the player a hint to the puzzle solution. Perception, big thing here. Whole section on it. Perception. As the DM, you're the interface between your players and the world of the game. You tell what their characters perceive, so it's important to make sure you're telling them information that's important to their surroundings. The perception skill and wisdom checks made using it are key tools for you. This section offers guidance to help you use the perception rules in the player's handbook. When to call for a check. An important time to call for a wisdom perception check is when another creature is using the stealth skill to hide. Noticing a hidden creature is never truly easy or automatically impossible, so characters can always try wisdom perception checks to do so. Using passive perception. Sometimes asking players to make wisdom perception checks for their characters tips them off that there's something they should be searching for, giving them a clue you'd rather they didn't have. In those cases, use characters' passive perception scores instead. Using the investigation skill. The investigation skill applies to situations where a character is using reason and deduction to arrive at a conclusion about something under examination. Investigation applies when characters are trying to figure out how a thing works. How do we open a trick door? How do we get into a secret compartment? And so on. Don't use the investigation skill to determine if a character notices something. That's the purview of perception. For example, a successful wisdom perception check allows the character to find a secret door or something that betrays its presence, such as thin seams marking the edges of the floor. If the secret door is locked, a successful intelligence investigation check would allow the character to figure out the trick to open it by turning a nearby statue so it faces the door, for example. Hidden things in adventures. Secret doors, hidden compartments, concealed traps, and stashed treasures are common elements in adventures. When using such elements, if something is hidden, allow for the possibility that the characters might not find it. It's fine to hide extra treasures or delightful surprises, but don't hide elements that are essential to the character's success in places where the characters might not find them. Even if the hidden objects aren't essential to the adventure's success, plant hints that clue players into the idea that there might be something hidden for them to find. Such hints can be subtle. The characters hear a strange rattle when opening the desk drawer, suggesting the presence of a hidden compartment in the back or bottom of the drawer. Or obvious. Clear footprints lead across the room to a blank wall that is actually a secret door. These hints let players discover fun secrets without requiring them to spend extensive time searching every square foot of every room and hallway. Perception and encounters. If a character encounters another group of creatures and neither side is being stealthy, the two groups automatically notice each other once they are within sight or hearing range of one another. The audible distance table can help you determine the hearing range, and the following sections address visibility. If one group tries to hide from the other, use the rules then that are in the player handbook for stealth. Audible distance, noise. If we're trying to be quiet, you could be heard up to 2d6 times 5 feet away. Mathematically, that would be 10 to 60 feet. Normal noise level can be heard between 2d6 times 10, which would be 20 to 120 feet. Normal noise, conversational noise, very loud, is 2d6 times 50 feet, which is going to get us 500 to 600, 10, yeah, that's, I'm stupid, 100 to 600 feet. Okay? That's a lot of noise. That's a lot of audible distance. Keep that in mind. Visibility outdoors. When traveling outdoors, most characters can see about 2 miles in any direction on a clear day, except where obstructions block their view. That range increases to 40 miles if they're atop a mountain or a tall hill or otherwise able to look down on an area from a height. Lightly obscured conditions reduce visibility. Rain reduces maximum visibility to 1 mile, and fog reduces it to between 100 and 300 feet. Outdoor terrain determines the distance at which characters encounter other creatures. The travel terrain table, see travel below, gives suggested encounter distance for different types of terrain. Visibility at sea. From a ship's crow's nest, a lookout can see things up to 10 miles away, assuming clear skies and a relatively calm sea. Ow. Overcast skies reduce that distance by half. Lightly obscured conditions reduce visibility just as they do on land. Visibility underwater. Visibility underwater depends on water clarity and the availability of the available light. Use the underwater encounter distance table to determine the encounter distances underwater. Clear water with bright light is 60 feet. Clear water with dim light is 30 feet. Murky water or darkness is 10 feet. You don't know they're there until they're there. Next section in running exploration is travel. The rules in the exploration section of the player's handbook cover the basics on travel on a scale ranging from minutes to days. The tools in this section can add excitement to a longer trek. Journey stages. It can be helpful to break up a journey into stages, with each stage representing anything from a few hours journey to 10 or so days of travel. 10 days or so of travel. A journey might have only a single stage if the trip is a matter of following a clear path to a well-known destination. A journey consisting of 3 stages makes for a more satisfying track. For example, the characters might travel along a river to the forest edge, then follow a trail into the heart of the woods, and then search the woods for an ancient ruin. A long journey might involve even more stages and occupy several game sessions. You decide how to break up the journey, though your decision can be shaped by the character's plan for navigating the journey. When the characters know the route they must take, the stages of the journey should correspond the way you might give someone directions, as in the example above. Planning the stages. You can use the accompanying travel planner sheet to plan the stages of a journey. Use multiple copies of the travel planner for a journey with more than 3 stages. For each stage, note where it starts and where it ends, the distances covered, and the predominant terrain. Choose or randomly determine the weather on that stage. See weather later in this chapter. Plan 1 or more challenges for each stage, such as an encounter, an obstacle, a search for something hidden, or the chance of getting lost, as described under Journey Stage Challenges. Running the stages. For each stage of the journey, follow these steps in order. Step 1, set the pace. Have the players choose their group's travel pace for the stage, slow, normal, or fast. See travel pace. Based on the length of the stage in miles and the group's pace, determine how long this stage takes to complete. Step 2, narrate the travel. Describe what happens if the characters complete this stage of their journey. Introduce and resolve any of the challenges. See Journey Stage Challenges. Step 3, track food and water consumption. Each creature in the party expends the appropriate amount of food and water for the length of the stage. If the party lacks enough food or water, the characters risk dehydration and malnutrition. Step 4, track progress. Track the party's progress at the end of the stage. You might mark their position on a map of the region and note the elapsed time on the travel planner. Depending on how you plan the stages, the end of a stage might mean the characters arrive at a landmark, a way station, or an adventure location, whether or not it's their final destination. Now here we have a little bit of a sidebar before we get to our tracker, our planner. Journeys without destinations. Sometimes characters travel without a clear path to follow or a clear destination in mind. In such a case, use the grid of your map, squares or hexes, to define the stages of a journey, however many miles each square or hex might be. This style of play is sometimes called hex crawling. In this kind of wilderness exploration, you can take one of two approaches to travel challenges. The sandbox approach. Your map of the area determines what the characters find when they enter any particular hex on the map. You might have encounters or obstacles in place for every hex, or they could be spread further apart. Or the random approach. Use tables to randomly determine encounters or obstacles in each hex the characters enter. Whichever approach you use, running a journey otherwise works the same as described in the rest of the travel section. Good information there. Travel planner. Origin, destination, stage 1, start, end, distance, terrain, weather, narrative notes, how fast is the party moving, and their challenges, and it just repeats. Again, these are nice visual aids that will help guide you. You may not like the layout, you may need more, you may be happy with it, but this is a visual aid that's going to help a new DM kind of see what everything looks like in one spot. Some people can read the words, but until they see it presented, the words don't make sense. That's the idea here. Not that everyone must use this chart. So anyway, weather. During each stage of the character's journey, you can determine what the weather is like by rolling on the weather table, adjusted for the terrain and season as appropriate. Roll 1d20 3 times to determine the temperature, the wind, and the precipitation. Weather has no significant game effect most of the time, but see environmental effects in Chapter 3 for the effects of extreme weather. Adding weather details to your descriptions of the character's journey can make it more memorable. Weather, 1d20 for looking for temperature and wind. You're going to roll the first d20. 1 to 14 is normal temperatures. 15 to 17 is slightly warmer. Slightly to seriously hotter. 1d4 times 10 degrees colder. 1d4 times 10 degrees Fahrenheit hotter. Maybe not as bad for our Celsius boys, but 40 degrees is a big swing. Likewise with wind, 1d20 for none, light or strong, and another d20 for precipitation, light rain or snowfall, heavy rain or snowfall, or none. Next section is travel pace. Almost done with this section, guys. A group of characters can travel overland at normal, fast, or slow pace as described in the player's handbook. During any journey stage, the predominant terrain determines the character's maximum travel pace, as shown in the maximum pace column of the travel terrain table. Certain factors can affect a group's travel pace. Good roads. The presence of a good road increases the group's maximum pace by 1, from slow to normal or from normal to fast. Slower travelers. The group must move at a slow pace if any group's members' speed is reduced to half or less of normal. Extended travel. Characters can push themselves to travel for more than 8 hours per day at the risk of tiring. At the end of each additional hour of travel beyond 8 hours, each character must succeed on a Constitution saving throw or gain 1 exhaustion level. This DC is 10 plus 1 for each hour past 8 hours. Special movement. If a party can travel at a high speed for an extended time, as spells such as Wind Walk or magic such as Carpet of Flying, translate the party's speed into travel rates using these rules. Miles per hour equals speed divided by 10. Miles per day equals normal pace equals miles per hour times number of hours traveled. Typically 8. Fast pace equals miles per day times 1.1 1/3 rounded down. Slow pace, miles per day times 2/3 rounded down. Yeah, we're getting into some actual math here. If the characters are flying on their special movement allows them to ignore difficult terrain, they can move at a fast pace regardless of terrain. Vehicles. Characters traveling in a vehicle use the vehicle speed in miles per hour to determine the rate of travel, and they don't choose a travel pace. So this next section is a little bit, this next table, let me describe it in case you're listening. It's called travel terrain. It goes from left to right in columns. The terrain type, followed by the maximum pace, which would be the maximum speed that you can move within that terrain. The encounter distance, how close or far will encounters happen. The next column is foraging DC, how hard or easy is it to find food with a survival check. The next one is navigation DC, how hard or easy is it to make your way around the terrain. And the last one is search DC, how much of an impact on searching does this terrain type have. So the first terrain list is Arctic. The maximum movement pace is fast if you have the appropriate gear. Encounter distances happen at 6d6 times 10 feet. That would be between 60 feet and 360 feet if my math is right. Foraging DC is 20. Navigation DC is 10. Search DC is 10. Harder to find food, easier to find your way around, easy to find stuff, it's just snow. Coastal. Maximum pace is going to be normal. Encounter distances happen a little closer here. 2d10 times 10. So an area between 20 feet away and up to 200 feet. Foraging DC is 10, is easier. Navigation is even easier. It's the coast. Search DC is 15. Some nooks and crannies to hide stuff in. Desert. Maximum pace is normal. Encounter distance is 6d6 times 10. Foraging is difficult with a 20. Navigation is moderate with a 10. Search DC is moderate with a 10. Terrain travel type forest. Maximum pace is normal. Distance is 2d8 times 10 feet. Foraging DC is 10. Navigation DC is 15. Search DC is 15. Grassland is the next terrain. Maximum pace is fast. Encounters happen at 66 times 10 feet. Foraging is 15. Navigation is 5. And search is 15. Hills. Maximum pace would be normal movement. Encounters at 2d10 times 10 feet. Foraging at 15 DC. Navigation at 10 DC. Searching at 15 DC. Terrain is mountain. Maximum pace is slow. Encounters happen at 4d10 times 10 feet. Foraging DC is 20. Navigation being 15. And searching is 20. Mountains suck. Swamp. Maximum pace of movement is slow. Encounters are 2d8 times 10 feet. Foraging DC is 10. Navigation is 15. And searching is 20. Hard to find stuff in muck. Underdark. Normal movement pace is your maximum. 2d6 times 10 feet is your encounter distance. 20 foraging DC, 10 navigation DC, but 20 searching DC. Next is urban. That would be our cities. Normal pace of movement, 2d6 times 10 feet for encounter distance, 20 for foraging, 15 for navigation, 15 for search. Waterborne, you're on a boat now. That's different than coastal. Coastal is you're on the beach. Maximum pace is special, dependent on the vehicles, on the travel of the vehicle or their skills. Encounter distance, 66 times 10. Foraging is going to be 15. Navigation DC is 10. Search DC is 15. So that table will help you kind of get an idea of the difficulty of using each terrain for survival, for navigation, for finding caves and lairs and all that kind of stuff. So next stage, wow, this is a beefy section. We're gonna do some commentary after this section, and then we'll do the last two on our next episode. Narration during travel. Just as movies use travel montages to convey long and arduous journeys in a matter of seconds, you can use a few sentences of descriptive text to paint a picture of a journey in your players' minds before moving on. Describe this journey as vividly as you'd like, but keep momentum by focusing on the most notable details that reinforce the desired mood. Visual aids can help set the scene for the character's travel, and image searches on the internet can lead you to breathtaking landscapes. In fact, that's a good phrase to search for. You can spice up your descriptions with truly fantastical elements. For example, a forest might be home to tiny dragonettes instead of birds, or its trees might be festooned with giant webs or have an eerie green glowing sap. A single fantastic element within an otherwise realistic and memorable landscape is often enough. Use the landscape to set the mood and tone for your adventure. In one forest, close-set trees might shroud all light and seem to watch the adventurers as they pass. In another, sunlight streams through the leaves above, and flower-laden vines twine up every trunk. Signs of corruption, such as rotting wood, foul-smelling water, and rocks covered with slimy moss, can be a signal that the adventurers are drawing close to the site of evil power that it is their destination or can provide clues to the nature of the threats to be found there. Last section, journey stage challenges. Let's see. Well, big section, but last section. Challenges that adventurers might face during a journey stage include the following, which are discussed in the sections that follow. Encounters with other creatures. The encounter distance column in the travel terrain table gives the range at which creatures might become aware of each other while journeying through the wilderness. When staging an encounter, consider these possibilities. An ambush. Monsters set up an ambush along a route they expect travelers to follow. An attack from above. Flying monsters swoop down to attack the characters. This distance sighting. The characters and monsters spot each other from a distance in open terrain. Found by chance. The characters happen upon monsters that are camping, eating, hunting, basking in the sun, walking along the same trail, or engaging in some other activity. Pursuit. The characters are tracking monsters or the monsters are tracking them. This encounter begins when the two groups get close enough to interact. Another thing that can happen during challenge stages is foraging. Characters without water and rations can stave off dehydration and malnutrition by gathering food and water as they travel. A foraging character can make a wisdom survival check once per journey stage or once per day if the stage is shorter than a day. The DC is determined by the abundance of food and water in the region, as shown in the foraging DC column of the travel terrain table. If multiple characters forage, each character makes a separate check. A foraging character finds nothing on a failed check. On a successful check, roll 1d6 and add the character's wisdom modifier to determine how much food in pounds a character finds per day on this journey stage, then repeat the roll for water in gallons. Sidebar. Do players need to track rations? You might decide that tracking rations is unnecessary in your game. Even if the character is in a desert, you can assume that a character with proficiency or survival skill can find enough food and water to sustain the party. Make sure you work that into your narration of the journey so the player feels good about choosing that skill proficiency. You can also assume that characters can load their mounts with enough rations for their journey, or they can use magic such as create food and water to sustain them. On the other hand, having players track rations seems appropriate for a more realistic campaign. Characters in such a campaign should approach a long wilderness journey as a challenge in logistics. How many pack animals do they need to carry the food for their journey, and how do they feed their animals? As always, communicate your expectations about these rules to the players ahead of time, Session 0. If you don't plan on tracking rations, tell your players that before they spend an hour purchasing supplies for their journey. Navigation. If the characters aren't following an established path or traveling with a landmark in sight, they risk getting lost. Here are some circumstances that can happen that can cause a group to lose its way. Branching passages underground, horizon obscuring terrain such as a dense forest. Obscuring weather such as heavy rain or fog. Traveling at night. Traveling at sea while being unable to see the sky or any familiar land. Let the players know when their characters are at risk of getting lost, then have the characters choose one of their number to make a survival check against an appropriate DC appropriate to the terrain, as shown in the navigation DC column of the travel terrain table. Another member of the group can take the help action to assist this check as normal. If the check fails, the party goes off course. You decide what this looks like. They might follow the wrong branch of a river, they may orient themselves to the wrong mountain peak on the horizon, or get turned around in the forest. As a baseline, assume that getting lost extends the length of the journey of the current journey stage by 1d6 times 10%. It might also affect subsequent stages of the journey. Next one is obstacles. An obstacle is terrain or weather that obstructs the character's path. Examples include a cliff, a blizzard, or a forest fire. To get past the obstacle, characters might need to backtrack and find an alternative route, or they might need to take shelter until the obstacle goes away. Let the players spend time thinking about a solution, then be generous in educating whether their plan works. In addition to the chance of a delay, adding a few hours, a day, or a couple of days to the current stage of the journey, here are some other consequences you can impose if the characters fail to overcome or bypass an obstacle. A combat encounter. The characters encounter one or more hostile creatures. For example, marching through a burning forest instead of circling around it might prompt an encounter with raging fire elementals. Damage. The characters can take damage. For example, a character who tumbles over a waterfall might take bludgeoning damage. See the improvising damage in this chapter for guidelines in determining how much is appropriate. Exhaustion. The obstacle fatigues the characters, causing them to gain exhaustion levels. For example, marching through a blizzard instead of taking shelter might cause each character to gain 1d4 exhaustion levels. Another condition. The obstacle imposes another condition on the character. For example, wading through a fetid swamp weather and skirting around it might impose the poison condition, which lasts until removed by magic. Searches. This challenge often comes up in the last stage of their journey. The characters have to find their destination, which might be an island, an old mine, an ancient ruin, a magical pool, a hag's cottage, or some other feature. The search DC column of the travel terrain table suggests DCs for wisdom perception checks made to find something in different types of terrain. You can adjust these DCs based on the specific terrain feature and the nature of what the characters are trying to find, using the guidelines for setting DCs earlier in the chapter. Tracking. Hey, we're almost done with this read section. Yay, us. A specific instance of searching on a journey is when adventurers choose their path by following the tracks of other creatures. To track, one or more trackers must succeed on a wisdom survival check. You might require trackers to make a new check in any of the following circumstances. Resting. The trackers resume tracking after finishing a short or long rest. Shifting weather or terrain. The weather or terrain changes in a way that makes tracking harder. Terrain obstacles. The trail crosses a river or similar obstacle that allows no tracks. The DC for the check depends on how well the ground shows sign of a creature's passage. No roll is necessary in situations where the tracks are obvious, such as following an army along a muddy road. Spotting tracks on bare rock is more challenging unless the creature being tracked leaves a distinct trail. Additionally, the passage of time often makes tracks harder to follow. In a situation where there is no trail to follow, you can rule that tracking is impossible. Use the search DC column of the travel terrain table as the starting point for setting DC for your tracking. If you prefer, you can choose a DC based on your assessment of the difficulty. Higher if days have elapsed since the creature's passed. Lower if the creature's leaving an obvious trail such as blood. You can also grant advantage on the check if there's more than one set of tracks to follow, or disadvantage the trails pass through a busy area. On a failed check, the character loses the trail, but can attempt to find it again by carefully searching the area. It takes 10 minutes to find a trail in a confined area, such as a series of caverns, or 1 hour outdoors. And that's the end of this section. We'll do running combat and character advancement in our next thing here. So first, a little bit of commentary. This video is going to be long. My apologies. Running exploration. We took the idea of social interactions and exploration, resolving outcomes as well. We talked about that a little bit ago. So the idea here is, first and foremost, don't make the mistake of thinking that each encounter is only social or only exploration or only combat. The main thing to understand is there's distinct differences between the three, but the three types of encounters do overlap. These are kind of stream of conscious things that you have to be mindful of. If you're focusing on social interaction, this is what you look for. If you're focused on exploration, this is what you look for. If you're focused on combat, this is what you look for. But as we read through this, I think there was examples of all three of these events bleeding through into each other, right? So they are three separate pieces, but they often come together, okay? So the NPC portrayals, exploration, the main, man, there's a lot to talk about here. Let me slow down. Okay, time is an important factor in your campaigns. Trading time for rolls is an acceptable thing to make sure to keep the table going, but make sure you're tracking the time lost. If they're following someone, if there's something, the quest MacGuffin is going to detonate in 10 days, you better be tracking your time, down to the minutes, down to the hours, etc. Spell timers are a huge thing to keep track of, okay? Now, don't bog your game down in details, especially for new DM. My opinion is I would err on the side of flexibility rather than absolute accuracy. The thing to keep in mind is we're playing a game and you want to keep the pace of the game going. It's okay to give the players a minute or 2 minutes to err on the side of caution instead of disrupting the table and arguing about, well, my egg timer says that you guys spent 6 minutes doing that. It's okay. Similar to the social interaction, taking turns in exploration, this comes up a lot. When you have 6 players at your table, make sure that everyone gets a voice. Even if they chose to say, I'm going to go ahead and sit this one, I'm going to watch, I'm going to keep watch, that's fine. But make sure that you're acknowledging each of the players. because when you get into the situation where you have a social interaction and then an exploration, then a combat, if you look at them as separate entities, each of your characters is going to have strengths and weaknesses. Just because they're not strong in a social interaction encounter doesn't mean you ignore them. Please make sure to check in with the characters, with your players. If they choose not to participate, that's their choice, but make sure to give them that choice. The taking turns things is huge. Perception. I like that a lot. There's one thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit earlier that I should have done, the resolving outcome section. I like that we're putting emphasis on the players don't ask for a roll. Can I make perception? What for? To see if there's anything there. No, you can't. Tell me what you're doing and I'll let you know what roll to do. I like that we're encouraging our players to do that a little bit more often now with the 2024. Because it's been the standard that players have been choosing when to, I want to make this roll, I want to make that roll. We need to get away, and this is me opining here, but we need to get away from the players demanding a roll and get more towards the players telling us what their characters are doing, and then the DM asks for a roll. That's a huge shift, and a lot of what you've been reading here kind of supports that idea. The player is responsible for telling you what to do, what they are doing, what they want to try, how it looks like. We then decide which roll is appropriate, and then we as a group between the die roll, the character skill, and my description tell them what happens because of their action. I want to search this chest. Okay, give me an investigation check. I failed it. Okay, a lock. The lock has a needle in it. It pricks you in the hand, and now you're poisoned, for example. So there's a lot of nuance in here. This video is going long. I promise you, I got a lot to say about it, but I don't want to drag everything out onto an editorial thing. I want to focus on the reading, so we'll just go. If you want to hear more about my opinions, join us over on the Twitch channel, man. Tuesday to Saturday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. We sit around and we chat about these kind of things in our and other stuff in our D&D chat. So feel free to join us over there. But thank you for your time. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and we will be back for our next episode for running combat and character advancement. See you soon.